She told me it was just a group chat when I asked why her ex DMs her at 2 a.m. I said, sure, and then I showed everyone the screenshots. I'm Alex, 34. My girlfriend is Lena, 31, and her ex is Mark, 33. We've been together 3 years and living together for the last year. Lena works in product marketing and has a busy social life. Mark dated her years before I met her. They'd always called her friendship after the breakup, and I believed that until the late-night messages started. It wasn't one big thing at first, just a slow accumulation of moments that made me uneasy. A laugh cut short when her phone lit up. A text she flipped face down and tucked in her pocket when I walked into the room. A photo that appeared on her phone and then vanished from the album she showed me later. I try to be reasonable. I get that jobs and old friends sometimes bleed into late hours. So when I asked gently, "Who's demanding you so late?" she said flat, "It's just a group chat, Alex. Not a big deal." I shrugged and said sure. I wanted to trust her. A couple nights after that, her phone buzzed on the couch at 2 in the morning. I told myself to let it be. Curiosity, though, is louder than rules sometimes. The next morning, I saw the preview. Mark's name, a short line that didn't look like team logistics. I told myself to wait for Lena to tell me, but a week of small annoyances later, an extra coffee receipt, a lipstick mark she blamed on a spilled drink. I opened the messages. They weren't one-liners from a group. They were private DMs from Mark. Nothing pornographic, nothing that would land in a tabloid, but they were intimate in tone. Missed that laugh tonight. We should catch up. Just as photos sent with little comments, jokes that read more like inside language than friendly banter. When Lena replied, she used things like a wink emoji or a heart sometimes. The messages read like a private thread 2 people were keeping to themselves. Finding them didn't make me feel clever. It made me feel like my hands were holding a hot thing I couldn't set down. I thought about confronting her right then, but the image of yelling in the kitchen in front of our kid flashed in my head and stopped me. I also thought about quietly asking her to be transparent later. Most of all, I thought about the way people rewrite stories. How quickly someone with a good explanation can paint the other person as dramatic. I wanted witnesses who knew us and would remember what happened instead of a later version where I was the jealous boyfriend. So I printed screenshots, 2 of the messages that felt the most like cross lines, folded them into plain envelopes, and invited a few close friends over for what on the surface was a typical Thursday pizza night. I told only one friend why I wanted them there, the friend who'd always been the kind of person to call things how they are. The others came thinking it was the usual: beer, bad jokes, and the kid running around. When the time felt right, after the kid was asleep and the conversation had loosened, I set an envelope at Lena's plate and said nothing. She opened it like it was mail. Then someone read aloud the line that said, "I missed you tonight," and you could feel the air change. Lena went through a series of faces: shock, anger, panic, then a kind of small, raw shame. She cried. She called me every name she could think of. She accused me of invasion and spectacle. A few people asked calm questions. That quiet, clinical reading made the private tone something everyone in the room could name instead of letting it be dismissed as he's paranoid. I didn't post anything online. I didn't broadcast screenshots. I wanted the people who'd always heard Lena's compassionate interpretation of things to hear what was being said in private, and to do so in a space where she couldn't immediately reframe me as dramatic. Update 24 hours later. The morning after was a blur of small, awkward interactions. Lena stayed with her sister for the night. I sat with a friend at the kitchen table until dawn, drinking coffee and trying to parse what I'd done. People texted, some with support, some saying I'd gone too far. Lena left a voicemail that was half rage, half pleading, and then a message asking that I stop showing her messages to other people. She called the next day, and for the first time without a quick joke or a defensiveness shield, we had a real conversation. She said the messages had started as check-ins from an old friend after a long project, that Mark had been kind while she'd been overwhelmed, and that the private tone had grown in a way she hadn't planned. She admitted she hadn't told me because she didn't want to make me worried, and she was embarrassed, which felt like an honest, if painful, explanation. We scheduled a couple's appointment with a counselor she agreed to try because we both wanted a space that wasn't our living room or our friends' texts. That first counselor meeting was awkward and honest. Lena spoke in starts about loneliness and the way attention feels when your job eats your days, and I tried to explain why secrecy felt like betrayal. The counselor asked the blunt things neither of us wanted to say, and saying them out loud did something to slow the panic down. Update 1 week later. A week in, the social fallout started to map itself. A few friends stepped back, not because they judged me, but because it was awkward. A couple friends texted privately that they'd suspected something and apologized for not saying anything earlier. Lena's sister was quiet at first, then blunt. "You should have told me sooner," she said, which landed like a small, corrective blow. Lena blocked Mark that morning and sent a short message. "I'm sorry. I'm in counseling. That was practical and small, and it helped reset something factual, if not emotional. At home, we did the ugly work of airing out the small resentments that had been coiled up, me admitting that I'd pulled away some nights, Lena admitting that she'd leaned on an easy source of attention instead of telling me. We wrote a simple rule on a sticky note. If it feels like hiding, tell the other person first, and stuck it to the fridge like a joke. It was a ridiculous little relic, but we laughed at it once, which felt like a human, imperfect step forward. Update, 5 weeks later. The first month, and a bit passed with lots of small edits. Lena kept counseling, and it showed up as tiny shifts in how she talked about days at work. She started telling me when she had late meetings, instead of slipping out without a word. We set phone-free dinners 2 nights a week. We started a short ritual, 5 minutes after bedtime, where we check in about the week. Not just logistics, but this weighed on me, or this made me laugh. It's the kind of tiny habit that buys you time before suspicion grows teeth. Friends were variable. A couple close ones came around after seeing Lena own the mistake and do consistent work. A few people stayed distant. The group nights resumed, but with some people missing. The rotation changed, and the pizza nights felt a little smaller. We had setbacks, a passive-aggressive text I found, an irritated retort thrown across the kitchen. Those moments hurt because they felt like erosion, but they passed quicker than before. When we argued, we had a system: pause, state the hurt without accusation, take a 10-minute break, come back. It's boring and frustrating, but it kept things from going toxic. One night, about 5 weeks in, Lena made pancakes for the kid and put an extra plate on the counter for me, and we ate them with syrup on our fingers while the kid asked for one more a dozen times. I remember thinking that the ordinary bits, burnt edges of pancakes, coffee rings on the table, were the things that would either hold or break a relationship. That night felt like a small hold. Final update, 7 months later. 7 months later, the loud noise had mostly gone. Lena and I are still together. Not because everything is magically fixed, but because we both chose the slow, annoying work of regular check-ins and small changes. She's been consistent in therapy. She's more likely now to mention if an old friend asks to meet up. I'm better at saying what I need before suspicion hardens into accusation. We lost a few social connections, people who loved a tidy story and didn't want to sit with messy work. But the friends who stayed feel steadier for it. There are still nights where I wake for no reason and think about a phone buzzing in the dark. On those nights, I make coffee, send a stupid gift to Lena, and then go back to bed. She and I have new rituals that sound small: a weekly walk where our kid rides a scooter and we talk about actual stuff, and a rule that we don't ever let group chat be a cover for private threads we wouldn't want to explain. If you're listening for a moral, the only one I'd give is practical and small. Secrets grow in the gaps you don't fill with conversation. Pulling screenshots into a room was blunt and painful. It humiliated her and cost us social ease, but made the private public in a way that forced conversations we'd been dodging. The real thing that kept us together wasn't the reveal. It was the list of boring little repairs we stuck to afterward. Say the awkward thing early, go to counseling, keep your promises about transparency. That's how it sits now. Not clean and not cinematic, just quieter and more ordinary. The kid still wants the same bedtime stories. The pizza nights still happen, but with fewer people, and we still sometimes burn the pancakes. Those small things feel like the honest ending.